G'day guys, Tom Craig here. Welcome to my podcast, The Help Side. Now the help side is a term in hockey that refers to the other side of the pitch, away from where the ball is and the action happens. And in the same way, the aim of this podcast is to give you, the listener, an insight into the other side of elite hockey players, to hear about their highs, their lows, and what makes them tick. We'll also hear about the journey they went through, from having fun in the backyard to playing out their dreams on the world stage. So whether you're a player, a coach, an umpire, a parent, a fan, or just a fan of sport in general, I'm hoping this podcast gives you a window into the world of elite athletes, and even better, encourages you to get more involved in our great sport. You can hear the chat we had last week and others you may have missed by searching The Help Side on any major podcast platform. And if you want, you can like and subscribe our page to make sure that you're up to date with the most recent episodes. Anyway, that's enough of that. Let's get to this week's guest. Welcome to part B of the Help Side special with Adam Dixon. In the last episode, we had a fascinating chat to Adam about the GB high performance setup and the state of play of hockey in the UK. Really interesting stuff. And if you haven't already, I would suggest going back and listening to what Adam has to say in part A of this two-part series. Now in this episode, we get more personal and explore Adam's journey as an international hockey player. From winning gold at his first international tournament to missing selection at his home Olympic Games in London, through to getting his chance to shine at the Rio Olympic Games, and now being on the verge of leading his country to the Tokyo Games as captain. So let's rip in part B of the Help Side of Adam Dixon. You've had a very interesting journey. I mean, you debuted in 2009 after, must be said, a pretty good indoor tournament. It seems like that was kind of the gateway to your national outdoor career. Is that a fair statement?
Yeah, it would have played a bit of a part. I've not really thought of it because indoor hockey's not a huge sport. It's probably the same in Oz.
Well, it's very small.
But it does. I loved it. Just the quick, like the fast pace, high scoring, skillful, but also like very tactical game. Like it sort of suited my physical strengths. Being 5 foot tall, low to the ground, it suited me perfectly. But yeah, like the England indoor program kicked off just before I joined the outdoor squad, and it definitely was Andy Halliday, who's the current England manager for the outdoor squad. He was our indoor coach, and our indoor squad didn't feature any of the senior internationals. It wasn't sort of a priority at the time. But it certainly started. It gave you that sort of window of opportunity, or to be noticed. And yeah, some good memories. Like we had to start at the bottom of the European indoor competition, which is like C division, playing against I think Turkey and Sweden, Belarus, and other teams, and then we went all the way through. We went to World Cups. I never went to the World Cup, but the team qualified for the World Cup and European A divisions and stuff. So it was quite a good time, but. Yeah, I always wanted to be an outdoor international. I had my eyes set on that ever since I was that little 6-year-old. I think my earliest memories were probably watching Atlanta, then Sydney games on BBC, and that was the only time you could watch hockey on telly as a kid in the UK, was to see the GB team, men's and women's, when the Olympics came around. So I think I had like a worn out VHS, like this, like GB versus Holland men's game. We got Callum Giles and Toon de Nooijer, like loads of people. But I just remember watching that and thinking, gosh, that is the pinnacle of our sport, and I want to be there. And I think, that sort of definitely instilled a lot of inspiration in me. And when I finally got that chance to play in 2009, it was it was a dream come true. Yeah,
and it was a good year for you as well.
Clear as day.
For GB too, you were like, we'll talk about your debut, I guess. I mean, if it's a lifelong dream, how did it feel stepping out there on the pitch?
It was. We played Germany in Nuremberg, and it must have been about April-May time of 2009. It was just a couple of test matches. I can't remember what sort of size squad we took out there, but there was obviously a good chance that I was going to get my first cap. I was playing halfback those days and just got thrown in. I think we lost the game 2-1. And I had probably the greatest opportunity to score on debut you could ever be gifted. I was trapping short corners. At that point, I wasn't a gun flicker like I am these days. I was trapping his corner, and whoever injected the ball pulled it out very badly over to my forehand. So I trapped it, and I was faced with a free shot on goal.
Yeah,
and I ripped the shot, but it flew past the post by like an inch, and I just remember doing that. Like it then took me probably about 35 games to get on the score sheet, and I just always kept coming back to that first game. I was just wishing you should have scored. But yeah, it was like singing the national anthem for the first time. Yeah, being part of that squad in which, you know, Ashley Jackson, Ben Hawes, Rob Moore, Glenn Kirk, there are loads of really good players who I'd looked up to and played against for a long time, and to be finally sort of accepted into that group was was a real, I guess, defining moment for me.
Very cool.
But it did go on to be a pretty good summer.
A great year. Then you went to the Euros.
Yeah, so that's
which is big as well for the Aussie listeners. Explain how big that is for you guys.
I'm trying to find some good words in my vocabulary, which I'm going to struggle with. But maybe we should keep it simple for you. Aussies.
I mean, if we go back to the 3 words you used to describe you, you can keep it at that level. Okay, that's fine. The
Europeans is sort of like it's like a mini World Cup, I guess.
Mm-hmm.
We get the luxury of having it every 2 years. You know, again, it's like a tiered system. You got the top 8 teams in the A division, and then the next run down, the next 8 teams B division. There's the C division, and we turned up to that tournament. It was in Amsterdam. Again, like, you know,
great place to play hockey.
Holy grail of of hockey, Amstelveen. We had a pretty tough run in. I think we did play maybe it was Austria or Poland. We had so we had I think we won the first game like 10-0, but then we played Belgium in the next game, who coincidentally, like now actually looking back, they were a young team and we beat them by 6-2 or something. Like it was a real comfortable scoreline. But now you look at that squad that Belgium had in that tournament, a lot of that team now featuring, you know, in the team
similar team
going today, and they were like, they were giving a lot of that talent, like they were blooding that talent early on. So for people who think that Belgian team is now, you know, they've just come about in the last, you know, 4 or 5 years, probably misled, because they've been. You look at some of their caps along there. It's insane. They were going, but that's 2009.
Yeah,
like Denia and
played a lot of games.
Others.
A lot of games together.
So then we played Germany in the group stage. I think we may have drawn that game, and that was our pool stage complete. And so then we went up against Holland in the semi-final. So you can imagine. I mean, you've played the Dutch in Amstelveen with a packed crowd. You know what it's like. It's all quite cozy. Like the stands are really close in.
It's very orange.
You get a really good atmosphere. And then when they sing that national anthem, like it's something else. And I remember this was a team that had, like, obviously, like Denoya, Takamar, like in his absolute prime, like ripping corners, like for fun, like Ronald Brower. It was just like a star-studded team, and we beat them somehow. I remember James Fair in goal, having an absolute stormer. He probably won us that semi-final. Like, it was just one of those things. Even if he wasn't quite in the right place, things just hit him. You know, it was just one of those games. Like Takamara, like, was flicking the ball on corners, and the ball was hitting Fair's helmet and flying over the bar, and just things were going right. And we had this, we just had this sense of sort of reckless, like, maybe not reckless, but like this confidence that we didn't necessarily have control of, but like we knew something good was happening all the way through that tournament. So we managed to get past the Dutch, and we played the Germans in the final again. Zeller, you know, the Zeller brothers even, first, and we beat them on golden goal. Golden goal. It was back in the days of golden goal extra time. It was just incredible. And that was my first ever international tournament. So to sort of be thrown in as like as the newbie and witness sort of European success right from the off was incredible. And it's something, I think, knowing what that sort of success feels like, we've not really had that same success since 2009. There's probably not many of us who have had gold medals on the international stage. Like, knowing what that feels like drives me on even more to want to, even at the age of 33, to keep going and try and get some more gold. That was certainly look back on that summer with very fond memories.
Yeah, I mean, that's a really interesting point that we're going to pick up on later. It wasn't super smooth sailing though. I mean, you're an Olympian. You went to Rio. We'll get to that as well. But in between 2009 and 2012, it was the home Olympics. I mean, you weren't picked in the 2012 team, and that was very disappointing for you. Do you want to just talk about that experience?
Yeah, I don't mind at all. So I guess it's sort of, to like wind it all the way back to 2009. That was my first tournament, and then for that whole London cycle building up to 2012, European Cups, Champions Trophies, Aslan Shah, like all those events. I went to every single tournament, and then to not get picked for that big one at the end, the one you've always dreamt of, it's pretty crushing. I didn't find out in the best of circumstances, but not necessarily helped. I actually got the news over a phone call. I wish I could have, not that I would have been able to challenge and change the coach's mind, but I wish I'd had it face to face. But I think it happened that we'd had our training slot had been moved. At the time I was living in Nottingham, 2 hours away from Bisham Abbey. This was before centralised programme. And we came down for a camp. Our pitch session had been brought forwards by a couple of hours, and the individual meeting that I had about my Olympic selection was in the afternoon of that same day. But being in a car full of all the other guys as well, we just wanted to get back off to Nottingham and just get back home as quick as we could. So I said to the coach, do you mind if you just call me instead of having a face-to-face chat? He said, yeah, no problem. And I got the phone call and got the news, and I was just like absolutely gutted. I couldn't really bring myself to tell my parents. That was probably the hardest thing, because they probably had the same expectations as me in a way, that I'd been, a solid part of that squad for the best part of 4 years, and then to not get picked for that games. And they look like the London games, you speak to any, like, people say it's one of the best organised games that's been going. Like, the amount of, I think you sort of have to understand, like, the media hype of a home games is probably something you for that 24 months building up to the London games, you couldn't escape it. It was on every TV advert. The news were reporting every sort of homegrown Olympic sort of story they possibly could. It was huge, and I'd been a part of all those interviews and stuff as well. And then to not get picked, it's like this huge, massive. Like, I felt like a bit of a letdown, to be honest. Letdown to my friends and family. That was really tough. I never really did get a solid reason behind. Like, it wasn't like, oh, you're not a good enough defender, or you're not fit enough, or there's nothing like that. It was more like the balance of the team feels right with X as opposed to Y. So it was super, probably the lowest point in my
crazy
my hockey career.
I mean, it's so
well,
go on.
I often think, did you get complacent? Like, could you have done more? You could always do more. I actually quite recently listened to a podcast where they spoke about, this is probably quite controversial, but it was called something like planned, like within an athlete development pathway, like planned trauma. So there's good evidence that suggests that if you have a player who has suffered some sort of trauma, whether it be deselection or an injury, and they've had to fight back and come back, they basically come back, to cut a long story short, they come back stronger. And I sort of like thought of my own hockey development journey and that. Like, I wonder if if the coach just hadn't picked me for one of those tournaments in that 4 years, would that have like, lit the fire a little bit, stoked that fire a little bit more in my belly? But so I'm not putting the blame on the coach. Like, he's got, his job is to pick what he thinks is the best team, and there's no doubt that he did that. But yeah, of course, you catastrophize and you think of all the eventualities and stuff. So that was the sort of stuff that was going through my head. But I just thought that concept of like putting, like, you would never put someone who was vulnerable to like mental health or whatever into one of those situations. You never drop someone on purpose. But like, if all the sort of pieces of the jigsaw were well aligned and that person was skilled enough to be able to cope with an upset, like, is that something we should maybe be looking at? And we all know people who have suffered setbacks and come back stronger, or haven't, and have, it was just something I thought about the other day.
No, that's interesting. You mentioned that in an article you featured in, you said that the Rio Games was one of the highlights of your career. I guess referring back to your point about the disappointment of London. Thanks for sharing that, by the way. That's difficult to do, but do you think that missing that selection, did it light a bigger fire for you to get to Rio, perform well? I mean, now you're the captain of GB. Not that that's an individual accolade that people actively seek, but I mean, your career's gone over and above, I guess since then. Do you draw upon that regularly? Is I guess what I'm asking.
Without a doubt. My sort of, that sort of like catastrophizing stage was just like, right, I'm done with hockey. Like, I actually didn't go and watch the Olympics. I watched a little bit on TV. Yep. I wish I sort of had, probably one of my regrets is I wish I had done, because it was such an amazing event. But I just felt like I needed to get away from hockey. Yeah. So I bought a camper van. I went traveling in Europe for 5 weeks, surfed every day, just ate what I wanted to eat. And me and my now fiance, we had such a great time. But then it was like sort of like a bit of a soul searching trip without really intending to be. And basically came away from that trip like, it was only been 5 weeks since I last picked up a stick, but like hungrier than ever to play hockey. And there was no way that I was gonna not be on that flight to Rio. Like, absolutely no way. And I mean, you've got to work hard for stuff. And if there's anything I learned from that disappointment from London, was just that you have to sort of, you can't let fate decide. You've got to sort of, if you really want something, you've got to make it obvious that you want it. Almost put the coach in a place where he has to pick you because you've trained your nuts off for 4 years. And that was how I went into that next Rio cycle. Now, how Rio went wasn't brilliant, but for me, the Rio Games, being part of, putting on that kit and being part of Olympic Games had always been a dream of mine. And I sort of, like, every single morning that I woke up in the village, opened the curtains, I was like, oh, God, they're so grateful to be here, which was sort of a bit weird because there's a lot of other people there who were like just dead set on winning a medal, and it was all that mattered to them. They didn't really enjoy the moment. And I think you have to have, if you're going to be successful and look back on the experience as a whole as a successful one, without a medal or with a medal, like, you've got to smile along the way. Like, you've got to enjoy these moments. It can't all be built up and be pressurized. You play your best when you're happy and relaxed. So that was how I sort of went into Rio.
Yeah, I mean, that's an interesting one as well, because we spoke about it earlier about at the Commonwealth Games, I guess you perform as England. You guys play as England. There's Scotland involved. There's Wales involved, and then when you come around to Rio and the Olympic cycle, you're playing as Team GB. That's how does that work? How does that work with the team environment? And I guess you as captain now, like, how do you kind of, is that difficult?
It's not. I think it's an obvious trip hazard. So I think from day one, the powers that be at GB Hockey, the board, all the representatives from England Hockey, Scotland Hockey, Wales Hockey, Northern Ireland, like, they all knew that this, like, if it's not managed well, could be terrible. So to simplify it, the Olympic selection, the Olympic qualification is done by one of England, Scotland, or Wales. And at the beginning of Olympic cycle, you have to nominate which of those three teams. The FIH or the Olympic Association, the IOC, they require one of those teams to be like the nominated qualifying nation.
Right.
Most often than not, it's England because of world rankings a bit higher than the other two. So we go often as England, and or we had done until this year, 2019. Sorry, where we actually did compete as GB for qualification. All the other years we have to do it as England. So basically, England are the nominated governing body for GB. So all of the admin stuff all goes through the England Hockey Office. On a more day-to-day like playing side of things, day in day out we train as GB. If you look at it simply, we train as GB. All the athletes are there, no matter which country you're from. I think there are, we've got a couple of Welsh guys, and Alan Forsyth is our Scot. So there's not a huge, proportion of the squad is non-English. I think just having everybody around the whole time certainly makes life so much easier for a captain. You don't have to, you see the guys every day. So there are definite times when, okay, right, this is like the home nation, England, Scotland, Wales, like focus period. So you don't, if you're Alan Forsyth or Drapes or Rupert Shipley, like you can go and train with your home nations, but they won't have a centralised program like we do. They'll be on a camp basis, so they have to manage their time really well. But it sort of does work quite nicely. I mean, again, I've only really only experienced that as an Englishman, so it doesn't really affect me as much. But I think Danny picks Scots, Welsh, English, like on merit and not where you're born or what your heritage is. So it's it's not it probably looks quite confusing from the outside. I know when I went and played in Holland, they were like, "What's all this GB England like? What's going on?" I'm like, "It's just like politics. Don't worry about But I guess I could probably see on the other side of things. If you're like one tournament you go and you're playing England, and one tournament you go and then you're playing against GB, it could be a bit strange. But I don't think it's only a positive for us because we get to pick a couple more players that we can have had for England. Yeah,
for sure.
So I guess you guys might look at it and think, oh, it's a bit of unfairness. But the Olympic Games, we only compete as GB anyway. So it's,
yeah. No, it seems like it's more the cultural piece, I guess. I mean, you answered the question beautifully because like the guys train with you the entire time, and then I guess it's the anomaly where just before a Commonwealth Games, I imagine, where they go and train with Scotland for a little bit or Wales or something like that. But you are Team GB and very rarely splinter off. Is that fair?
Exactly that. Yeah,
okay.
Exactly.
And with that, I mean, I want to talk about Pro League briefly. 2019 for us, it's different because either you European countries, you come in. Well, I don't know if you are a European country. I don't know really what the politics is behind that or whatever. So countries like Northern Hemisphere countries, we go on tour and we just play, bang, 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 Spain, Germany, Belgium, whatever. We play all of you in 5 weeks. And it's great because it's a European tour. We're there and we've got, 5-6 games to focus on. But I mean, you guys come out to Australia, especially last year, you flew all the way to Australia to play one game, all the way to Argentina to play one game, all the way to New Zealand to play one game. That must be difficult. I mean, with your club competition, you guys are used to kind of getting up on the weekend for one game. I mean, week in, week out. But I guess, and as well, as a leader in that team, is it difficult to motivate the guys for one game?
You know what? I think it's sort of maybe the opposite. That's the way I looked at it anyway. I think you're going for one game, so you've got to be ready.
True.
You've got to be prepared and you've got to give it all. It felt, the Pro League for me last year felt a bit more like being a football player.
True.
And you're just peaking for the weekend. Like that's sort of how it felt for me, especially when you get that, that quick succession of games on home soil. Like you've got to turn things around quick. There's maybe not so much time to work on lots of things in training during the week. Like you've just got to be ready for the game ahead. Like there's always another game coming. So for me, I keep referencing my age, but as an older guy, I'd much prefer being like playing games than being training and stuck in a training block routine cycle. So for me, it was like great, like Pro League. Let's go and travel the world and play some games. Like I couldn't think of anything better. But yeah, I can't take away from the fact that it's a hell of a long way to come to Perth and play just one game. But we had, I think our performance director is pretty clued up when it comes to organising calendars and stuff. So we wouldn't go anywhere without having a good 5 or 6 days before a game, especially on those long haul flights.
Yeah.
We'd have a good lead in, get some heat exposure, get the jet lag out of the system,
go for a
and
surf.
then go for a surf. Thanks very much for lending me the board. And yeah, I think we've actually managed that really well. Is it a sustainable model? We definitely got it a bit better this time around with playing 2 games rather than 1.
Yeah.
I guess the financial side of it, only time will tell whether it works or not. But I think from a playing perspective, yes, it's tough, but I'd much rather be playing games.
Yeah, okay.
Give me a game over training.
Yeah.
Any day of the week.
For sure. And it is a departure from typical kind of tournament hockey. I mean, prior to the Pro League, I guess it's a great innovation from the FIH in the sense that, hockey, international hockey was typically either one-off test matches or a test match series against the same opposition, or it was a tournament along the same lines of the major, your World Cups, your Olympics. All the interim commitments, I guess, were tournaments. Do you like it? Do you like that?
The tricky one for me, I think, is that the Olympics is obviously still a tournament, and you need to be physically robust, and you need to be able to have confidence in yourself, in mind, body, in your teammates, in the coaching. Are we all robust enough to be able to go into a heavy pressure, high pressure environment and nail it for 14 days, 18 days? And I think the big tournaments like the World Cup will always be sort of similar. So I think you just need to have a good blend. So I think what we sort of tend to do now is, obviously the Pro League is the one-off games. If we know we've got a tournament coming up, our training sort of tends to reflect more what a tournament would be like. We'd train hard for a succession of days. If you have back-to-back games, we'll do 2 hard training sessions at Bisham Abbey to sort of replicate that and get some momentum going on that side of things. There's still something quite romantic about tournament hockey. And the Germans are absolute classic at it for years. Never started a tournament very well, but you knew by finals, going into the semis and if they made the final, they were just going to be right on it. And I think I still quite like the idea of that in sport, that you can. There's the unknowns of playing weaker sides who can cause upsets, and with the one-off games, I think that's you're less likely to get that drama. So I think you just need that balance of both. But
I mean, with the exception of, I guess, rugby sevens, especially off the football codes, it's very different. We play 2 games in 3 days. There's that rest day, and then you go again and again and again and again and again. And there's not really a lot of time to debrief and then look to the opposition. I mean, it's hectic. What's life like inside a tournament?
Yeah, it can be hectic. I think you've got to be well prepared, especially if you're going to somewhere, say, like India, where if you forget, I don't know, electric toothbrush charger or something, you're not going to be able to get hold of it. So you need to be, you need to have everything with you. You need to have a kilo of coffee to get yourself through. You need to have an Xbox or a Nintendo Switch is the popular one at the moment with the boys. But I think a lot of people fall foul of getting into like I was sort of briefly describing with the Olympics, getting a bit too serious and a bit too full on and not really appreciating why you're there at a tournament. Like, it's very easy just to get locked in your own hotel room.
Yeah.
Turn up to the 3 meals a day with the rest of the team and the team meetings, and that's sort of your only social interaction for the day. It's really important that you've got other stuff going on, whether that's playing Xbox or playing a game of cards or, just getting a bit creative with something. They're definitely things that, that need to be taken seriously. I'm trying to think of some other example. The World Cup in Bhubaneswar, the English team, we took over a local restaurant because the World League finals that we had
the year before
or whatever, where everybody got ill. Everybody was panicking. All the PDs were talking to each other about what we're going to do here. Like we can't have this at a World Cup because there's so much more at stake. So we took over a local restaurant and we brought our own chef over who worked with the English football team, So we employed his services for like the 3 weeks. He worked his absolute socks off. He was like broken man by the end of it. But what we could then, like, we could just control everything.
Yeah.
Like, we knew where the food was coming from, who'd cleaned it, blah 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 blah. And like, I think we had one person with a little bit of a sniffle, but on the whole, it worked. But tournament hockey can be a funny old beast. So yeah, you got to often think outside the box, and it's not just what the public see about when you turn up and play. It's not just about games. There's so many more team dynamic stuff going on when you're all you're living together. You're literally sharing a room with a bloke who, you might have benefited from sharing with him before, but what if you've got no choice? So at least like we try and plan like roommates. Like, get a good buddy who you can rely on. He's clean, and I mean, there's always going to be someone who gets to share a room with George Pinner, but I think you can't always control that. But yeah,
okay, that's a good answer. I've got one more question before we're going to go into a few quick questions. So the last question for you, rather, is you mentioned about in 2009 you tasted that gold medal success in the Euro hockey, and now we refer back to you being captain of the current group. And a lot of the younger guys haven't felt anything like that. Is it difficult to impart that sort of experience and that drive onto the young members of your team, or do you use it?
Good question. I think not overtly, I would say. I think I'm more of a leader who would lead by example. I'm not going to be the guy yelling and screaming, at every given moment. I just do my leading by example. And I think I hopefully earn the respect of the guys around me by being a nice person, showing that you care, having time for people. And then the crux of it comes down like being able to trust me on the pitch, like making the right calls, like not getting on people's back, and just role modeling in that way. But yeah, there's no doubt that 2009 success drives me. How much I sort of let that show to others, probably I think other people would maybe use it a bit more. I've definitely had situations where some of the leadership group have said, look, in a big team meeting, look, we haven't tasted as a team like genuine success. And someone might say, okay, there's only Adam here who's had a gold medal, or Ashley Jackson who's won the gold medal at that tournament. They're the only guys who've experienced it. So like look up to them. I don't think I'd ever do that. It's not really in my nature to do it that way. It's just like, let the hockey do the talking, and sort of like lead in that manner.
Yeah, you mentioned when you were talking about it a while ago that in that tournament, I guess things just clicked for you. But you did say that there were some things going on within the tournament. I mean, there was a freedom, there was a really tangible sort of feeling amongst the team of belief or something like that. Is that something that you try and bring to the team?
I think that's the more the cultural side of leadership, and I think that's probably the most conscious part of leadership. The thing I think about the most is not necessarily right, this guy's not playing well or I'm not playing well. It's more like where's the team at headspace wise? Like, are we building any momentum here? Like this cultural stuff, all these values, are we living to our values and like sort of like policing that? Yeah, there's like, it's no longer trying to compare like being captain and not being captain. It's like, I used to just probably be a bit more selfish, turn up to training, have the best training session that I could have given the circumstances, and then go home, not think about it, turn up the next day, do the same. Whereas now it's like, right, wake up, I'm having breakfast. All right, where are the team at? Where are the team at before training, given what I experienced the days or weeks before, and where do I want the team to be in 3 or 4 hours time? And it can be tricky. I think it needs to have, I think within team sport, you can't just rely on one person. So I'm really lucky that we have a leadership group. So there's 5 of us in there who all have different strengths. Some of us are a bit more outspoken, which sort of like fills into the space that I leave, not being like that sort of shouty, having a go type person. Some of us are a bit more like tuned into people's emotions and stuff. So like, I mean, it's little things like that that build a nice little leadership group. Importantly, to add on top of that, like your leadership goals have got to be aligned with the management team. And I think, like, speaking to Danny quite regularly, like, your messages have got to be the same. Your messages of, you've got to show that united front. There's actually one thing I had the benefit of speaking to Andrew Strauss, who's obviously the ex-Test captain for England, and he said that him and Andy Flower, that they just, they were just in it together. They played like good cop, bad cop at times, but like their messaging was always the same and always on point. And they were just unflappable, unbreakable. If people weren't pulling weight, then they knew exactly where they stood. And I think it's important to have that link between players and management, because you can't coexist without each other.
I guess with the fact that you guys basically live in each other's pockets. I mean, we experience things similar to that over in Perth, but I mean, it's almost a 24/7 job, I guess, being part of the leadership group or being captain. I mean, you don't need to just worry about actually at training, but it's the entire cohesion of the team as a whole. And then even when, I guess, you have your day off, when even people are going out and playing their own club hockey, I mean, how people perform in club hockey can kind of reflect how they're going to train the week after, I guess. I mean, we're all human and I guess driven on confidence by a certain extent, but it's a stressful job. It must be.
Yeah, it's I definitely had my apprehensions about taking on the role. We actually did, to give a bit of insight. It was just a vote. It was a player vote. I think you could vote for 3 people. It was like a weighted vote. So obviously your first pick got like 3 points and then 2 and 1. And yeah, somehow I got voted in. But I did have a little think, and I was like, do I want to do it? But then basically it was like, you've got the chance to captain your country. Like it's
a big
like
thing.
Whether you think you're ready for it right now or not, it's a big thing. Like, will you ever get this opportunity again?
Yeah.
Like, you've sort of got the player vote. People sort of are backing you, so just go and do it and give it your best. And I think I've tried to be humble enough to accept that I'm not the perfect leader, and to use other people when my strengths necessarily don't work in that scenario. We've got to do it for another 18 months, so the stress may continue, long continue. Yeah.
No, that's good. Well, mate, that's been fantastic. I think I've learned a lot, especially about GB hockey and definitely the way that you guys go about things and about you. But I've got 3 questions to finish off.
Okay.
I tend to do this with every interviewee. I mean, co-host. You're a co-host for today's episode. Best player you've ever played against?
You know what? I heard Jez say Mo Förster in his, and I think I'd have to agree. I'd also say he's probably he's probably the best player I've played with.
I guess he could be both. But
and that's not the question. Okay, both.
That's happening next.
He was always very, very tough to play against.
Well, so we're going with Mo Förster, best player you've ever played against.
Yeah, but I'm going to caveat with also played with, maybe.
That's detracting big time from my content.
Question
I don't know if I can accept that. Okay, Mo Förster. Yeah, that's fine. Yeah, go on. Tell me about it.
Yeah, I think partly due to his size, he's just massive. I mean, I had a period of international hockey playing centre midfield, getting matched up against Mo Förster, and no matter if he mistrapped the ball poorly, he could just stick his big arse in the way and he just couldn't tackle the guy. And I think, as much as that's just a natural trait that you're born with, you just couldn't get the ball off him. But it wasn't until playing with him that I think I really appreciated how good he was. So maybe he's not the best player I've ever played with. Maybe I just appreciated his skills and assets, his ass, until I did play with him. But I think he understood the game so well. He knew. I think he was basically I shared a room with him for one of the HIL seasons, and he was just sport obsessed. He would be watching handball, basketball, football, American football, and he sort of knew everything about every sport. And when it sort of like translated that into hockey, he was like, he sort of knew what was required at any stage of the game, given the scoreline, given how much time was left. And I don't think I'd ever really geeked out on sport like that. I've sort of tried to get a bit closer to it, like watching other sports and learning from different things. But he was so good at soaking all that up. But he was also just a nice, friendly guy who gained the respect. Like, I mean, you had the experience of playing with him in India as well. He just won respect. I mean, he's won World Player of the Year however many times and Olympic gold, so he sort of earned that automatically. But he was genuinely like just a good, humble guy. Got all the Indian players like on board, like playing to like sort of our style, which is part of the trick in that Hockey India League in a short space of time, getting everyone playing the same way. He managed to command that respect as captain, and we had a successful few years in that Kalinga Lancers team. So yeah, I look up to Mo for sure.
Okay, that's against and with. Is that right? With okay, actually,
I'll do a different one.
Well, you said David Ames. I think it was tongue in cheek.
Yeah. No, never tongue in cheek.
There was a caveat.
Was this on? When did I say this?
It was on another forum. I think you said because he makes you look good or something like that. I can't remember exactly what it was.
Amesy. I mean,
but I have heard you talk very fondly of him before.
And I think we all know players like these. Like he is like unbelievable professional. He cares so much about the team and people. He really gives it his all. But he's also one of the most talented hockey players and physically talented players I've ever played alongside. I had the luxury. He came over to play for Beeston as a young kid. I think he was playing for Ireland at the time, and I'm trying to think who the Irish coach at the time. He got in touch with our club coach and said, "Look, I've got a kid here. I think he needs exposure to a more regular, better standard of hockey." So we said, "Yeah, well, we'll take him." And little did we know we were taking on this sort of 20-year-old, down to earth, like most humble guy. But I keep talking about his personality, but his hockey did the talking because he's quite a quiet guy. His hockey does the talking, and he sort of playing in midfield alongside Amesy, who would just sit in at central midfield, one of the best tacklers I've ever met. He reads the game so well. He allowed me just that bit of freedom to just go out and play my game. He was definitely a huge part of that successful Beeston club side that we had that won a few national titles, and we had a few good EHL runs. I just think he's maybe a bit underrated because he doesn't he's never arrogant or anything like that. Like he's just a workhorse.
Yeah,
you've probably got guys that you know of in the Aussie squad.
I mean, in elite sport, it's like the way that it's produced and on TV. Like you only really see a fraction of what's actually going on, and it means that guys like Amesy just slip through the cracks a little bit in the public eye because the stuff that they do is just exceptional every time, and you really have to go to a game and watch them do their craft to notice it.
It's not just the games, and it's funny you say like the commentators often just get a couple of players' names in their heads and they repeat those over and over again. Maybe because they get on the ball a little bit more or whatever. But like Amesy's not like just sitting in there doing the dog's body work, but he does it in training. There's very rarely a training session where he's not like the best or one of the best players on the turf. And to have guys like him gives me huge confidence.
Okay. So when he says this is quite different, I think Jeremy Hayward said Dylan Wotherspoon's the best player he's ever played with because he makes me look good. I think he was meaning because Dylan is bad, which is not the case. But I think that was friendly banter. Whereas you're saying that Amesy makes you look good in that he frees you up to play your style of hockey.
Yeah, exactly.
That's a good team,
that's if you could have a team full of Amesy's, you know.
That's a great
team. Like someone's arm off for it, yeah.
So let's say two more questions. One, you've said one of your favourite sayings is smell the noise. I have no idea what that means.
No, I don't
I'm
really either.
interested.
But it's something that one of my old captains when I first broke into the Beeston team. He's actually the current Beeston first team coach. It's weird how these things all pan out. But Stephen Wood, whenever we used to win a short corner, he wasn't involved in the corner. I think he might have done a couple of injections or something at one point. But he'd normally be back on the halfway line. But you just hear 3 or 4 seconds before the corner gets pulled out, it just from the halfway line, smell the noise, and I have no idea what it means. But it's something about the backboard and maybe the ball going in the back of the net. And if those who know Woody know he's a bit eccentric and a bit odd, and that's sort of like his charm. And I quite like that. He didn't ever take himself too seriously, even in the middle of a game. He had that moment and that space to be able to just have a crack and have a bit of a laugh. Cool. And I quite like that. And I think that's something that I've tried to carry through. Nice.
I'm not going to chalk it up as a golden nugget of wisdom. It's a good side note, but it's not a finishing note.
I can't believe I wrote that down.
Yeah, it's just good stuff. Last question. I want one piece of advice for a young kid just starting out in their hockey journey.
I think it would just be to make sure especially as a young athlete, is to make sure you enjoy it and keep playing as many different sports as you possibly can at a young age. It definitely helped me. Like the more team, especially if you want to be in teams, like the more different team dynamics you can be in. You might be the best hockey player on your team, but if you go and play cricket, you might have to play, second fiddle to other guys, or maybe not get a bowl, or not get, you down the order in the batting lineup. So you sort of have to appreciate where I think you get that better rounded view of what teams are about. Playing lots of sports, but most of all enjoying it. I had this question actually I did an event at my old school, and a parent came up to me with her 2 kids, and she was like, "What advice could you give?" And she really caught me, like I was halfway through speaking to an old teacher or something, and then she was like, "What advice would you give to my 2 boys?" And I was like, "Ugh," and she really caught me out. I didn't know what to say, so I was sort of like, luckily I got dragged away to talk to someone else. But she then grabbed me again and said, "Look, I really want to know." And I was like, she looked like a real pushy parent, and I won't mention her name. She's probably not going to listen to this. No offense, Tom. But
that's okay.
I was like, your kids just need. I looked at these 2 boys, and they didn't look like they were really having that much fun. So I was like, just make sure they are. Like, you need their best interests at heart. She was like, "No, is it speed? Is it like stick skills? All this sort of stuff." I was like, you just need to be enjoying it. If you're not enjoying it, you're not going to have a long career, whatever level that might be at. You have to find the enjoyment, and it's not a one-liner that, but it's
I like it.
Enjoy it.
Sage advice. Yeah. Thanks, mate. We're gonna wrap it up there. Beautiful. Well done. Thank you for gracing us with your presence on the help side.
No worries. Can you send me the royalties online? Bank transfer?
Oh, of course. Yeah, I will naturally.
Okay.
Just flick through your details.
Thanks, mate. Thanks for having me.
Big thank you to the production team of David Moore, Tim Collier, and Jimmy Stevens. If you do like the help side, please like, subscribe, interact. We'd love to hear from you. You can find us at the help side on Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram. That's it for now. We'll catch you on the help side next time.